This is part 2 of 30. And when the true essence of God's unity will be seen, as discussed already, the purpose of all this is to show clearly, in actuality, all that lies within the power of the Supreme Unity. Part 2. In accordance with this pathway, as discussed earlier, the place it came into being in all its aspects corresponds directly to the degree of the Tzimtzum. The axiomatic law was instituted. This means that it was the rectification of the residue to form worlds and structures that was prepared, and the rule of good and evil was instituted, as I will presently discuss. That would eventually bring about the formation of a realm of existence based on good and evil. What this means is that good and evil, as such, were not revealed there immediately, but rather that a certain path unfolded in such a way that at the end the rule of good and evil emerges. To explain this whole matter, we know that there is such a thing as an opposite and something else that is divergent. What is truly evil is the other side, and all that results from it, namely every kind of ruin. This is literally the opposite of perfection. On the other hand, there is something which diverges from perfection and is incompatible with it, but which is not its complete opposite. This applies to all those deficiencies, which are not actual evil in themselves, but which lead to a steady deterioration until evil itself emerges. However, as long as we have only a deficiency and not actual evil, we cannot call it the opposite. You must now understand something that was introduced after the Tzimtzum. This is the line of measurement, the Kav Hamidah, also known as Butzina de Kardunita, the torch of darkness. This is the power to institute boundaries which causes lack and deficiency. For the Tzimtzum brought into being something that did not exist at first, deficiency. Initially all was perfection, and only afterwards deficiency emerged. Here we have the underlying power of judgment, which was revealed through the Tzimtzum. This is the power that causes concealment, void, and emptiness, bringing about every kind of deficiency that can possibly exist, as we actually find in reality. Nevertheless, this did not immediately cause the worst possible deficiency, which is the opposite of perfection, as we said above. What it did was to cause deficiency after deficiency, gradually, stage by stage. Each one was a further divergence from perfection until finally total deficiency emerged. The very opposite of perfection, the other side. Initially, the power of judgment caused only the slightest of all deficiencies, the first concealment, which was the concealment of perfection. Nevertheless, great light, abundance, and illumination remained. And this is the ultimate that the most perfect of creatures can attain. Afterwards, the power of judgment caused a greater concealment, leaving a radiation less than the first. So it went on, causing concealment after concealment. Each for the concealment brought about new consequences. Even the second concealment did not cause actual evil and destruction, but only a diminishment of radiation. In this way, things went down from level to level, with one concealment after another, and one deficiency after another, until actual flaws came into being, and then evil emerged, as will be discussed below. Thus, as soon as the Tzimtzum came about, it brought into existence this power to cause deficiencies, which would eventually produce evil. Indeed, this power was central in all the acts that followed the Tzimtzum, standing ready to descend and to spread forth from level to level until actual evil would emerge. However, since the intention was not only to produce evil, it did not immediately bring forth the evil that is the opposite of perfection. For in fact, the intention was to produce good and evil together. For this is the difference between perfection and imperfection. Perfection is entirely good, while imperfection can include good and evil. Perfection consists of nothing but perfection, while that which is deficient may involve many deficiencies, one worse than the other. If you think about it carefully, you will see that this comes from the fact that the opposite, total evil, was not brought into being at once. Initially, there was only a concealment of perfection that remained of the perfection that was not completely concealed is the good, while what was lacking from the initial perfection was bad. With the first concealment, a great deal of the initial perfection remained, while the deficiency was minimal. We could even say that there was no actual deficiency, but only a preparation that would eventually lead to the development of evil, inasmuch as there was now a state of concealment, whereas evil would not have developed from perfection at all. Thus, as stated earlier, there was as yet no deficiency, but only a state of concealment. Afterwards, a second concealment came about, but even so, much of the initial perfection remained, while the deficiency was still small. Thus it went down level by level each time. What remained of the initial perfection became less and less, for this is precisely what the concealment caused, until in the end only a modicum of the initial perfection remained, while the deficiency was so great that actual evil started to develop. Nevertheless, what is able to emerge from it is only the beginning of evil. With further intensification of the concealment level by level, eventually the deficiency becomes so great that actual evil comes into being, this being the very opposite of perfection, as stated above. Thus we find here two things that exist on all different levels. The first is the line of measurement, which is what causes successive degrees of concealment. The second is the existence of good and evil, which are what is left on the initial perfection, depending on the degree of the concealment and the extent of the deficiency. You must understand that the deficiency caused by the Tzimtzum is what is called the root of the roots of evil. In the end, when the deficiency becomes completely overwhelming, the result is that evil becomes manifest. Thus we see that the Tzimtzum is the root of the axiomatic law that eventually brings into being a realm based on good and evil. This law consists of what remains of the original perfection together with the deficiencies that came into being afterwards. What remained of the original perfection later brought forth the entire realm of holiness, which consists of the Sefirot in all their different aspects, while the deficiency brought about a new consequence, just as deficiency itself was a new innovation. This new consequence is the other side, as we'll discuss further later on. God made also this one against this one. Kohelet 7:14. Not only was evil brought into being, it was made parallel to good, so that through the fact that things are parallel, there will be a place for service, as will be explained in its proper place. This means that good was not automatically put in control, for then, even if evil existed in the world, it would have been subordinate to good. Instead, God also made this one against this one with equal power on corresponding levels and with equal ability to act. This way, everything that exists on the side of good has something against it on the side of evil, which, if it acts in the world, can cancel out that good. Thus, evil has the power to challenge good and not to allow it any place to act unless it receives help from man in the lower world. This creates an actual path of service for man in making room for good and rejecting evil. However, there are three important initial differences between them, which later give rise to innumerable other differences. The first is that the Sephirot are the will of the Emanator, blessed be his name, who is the single, unified. Again, I don't understand that word unified, because unified means to bring parts together. So I think it's a mistranslation or a misnomer if it's used. Single master, whereas the other side is merely one creation, which the master made because he wanted it. As it says, he makes peace and creates evil. Isaiah 45, verse 7. Thus, evil is subordinate to the soul master and dependent upon him, is merely charged with carrying out his order because this is what he wills. The second difference, which derives from the first, is that power of the Sephirot was exactly calculated in accordance with God's will. What this means is that the master, blessed be he, does not want to act in any other way except this. However, had he wanted, and whatever he may want, he can cause their power according to his will. The power they have at present, it appears that the other side can challenge them and leave no place for them to function. However, if Ein Sof, blessed be he, had wanted, he could have increased the power of the Sephirot as much as he likes. On the other side would no longer have the slightest ability to challenge the holy side. But compared to the power of the Sephirot, the power of the other side is truly limited. It only has what it is in it now, and it cannot in any way go outside its limit, even if it wanted to. The third difference is that the root of good was primordial and did not have to be brought into being as a new creation, while the root of the other side was a new innovation. The root of the other side is deficiency, which came into being only after the Tzimtzum. This provides the answer to what seems to be a major difficulty, for it appears that evil has two places, while good has only one. To explain, if we were to interpret only this one against this one as referring to the good and evil in the Sephirot themselves, meaning what remained of the initial perfection, good and deficiency, evil, we could justly call the other side the offshoot of evil, just as we call the holy side the offshoot of good. However, this is not the case, for we say that it is the holy side in its entirety and the other side in its entirety that are this one against this one. And there's a strong reason why we have to say this. For besides the nations of the world and the angels of instruction, there is something else as well. The 10 Sephirot of the husk, as explained in the Zohar in several places, Zohar Pekudei 242a and 264b. Now against Israel and the ministering angels, we can put the nations of the world, the angels of destruction, corresponding to perfection and deficiency. But to what can we say that the 10 Sephirot of the husk are parallel? They are a root that was created for the sake of their offshoot, the nations of the world and the angels of destruction, whereas the Sephirot of holiness are not a created root. They are God's essential will, and therefore not parallel to the root of the other side. We cannot say that the 10 Sephirot of the husk are parallel to the 10 Sephirot of the other side, because it has already been stated above that the root of evil is the deficiencies in the holy Sephirot. If so, what is the place of the 10 Sephirot of the husk? I might have to do a part 3 while it's pretty long. The problem is resolved because the third difference that exists between the holy side and the other side is explained above. The holy side did not require a new root, while the other side needed a root to be made for it, since it did not have one. Therefore, all the deficiencies in the Sefirot are nothing but a newly created root for the other side, and what develops out of it is the other side. We thus have two roots and two offshoots. The primordial root is the one unified Master, blessed be He, besides whom there is none other, Ein Sof, blessed be He. And what unfolds, where's the Messiah with this? Where's the Messiah come in? That's my question. And what unfolds from him is the Sefirot. And with the unfolding of the Sefirot, the Supreme Will created a new root, the deficiencies in the Sefirot, to serve as the root for a different consequence, which is the other side, with all that it involves. Okay. Thus, one cannot compare the Sefirot with their deficiencies, for the Sefirot are a branch and extension of the primordial root, which is Ein Sof, blessed be He, while the deficiencies in the Sefirot, which were newly brought into being to serve as the root of the other side, we can only compare the offshoot with the offshoot, the holy side, which is the offshoot of the primordial root on the other side, which is the offshoot of the deficiencies willfully brought into being by the Supreme Will in order to reveal His perfection through their repair, as discussed above. This is why Israel are the true firstborn, for since their root lies in the primordial good, preceded evil in the developmental chain, for the holy side always precedes the other side. Now you can see how the other side emerged. Initially, one light of holiness remained, the residue, which is an extension of the primordial root. However, this light contains a certain deficiency, and it is this deficiency that becomes the root of the other side. But this deficiency is not a branch. Parallel to that light of holiness, it is impossible to say that deficiencies in the Sefirot are equivalent to the Sefirot themselves, because the deficiencies were newly brought into being to serve as the root of the other side. They are thus considered a root and not an extension, whereas the Sefirot are an extension of the primordial Ein Sof. The deficiency in the light of the residue was one, from which the other side later emerges a branch parallel to a branch. The Sefirot themselves are a branch of the primordial root, while the deficiencies in the Sefirot are a new root from which the other side develops as a branch. This is the reason why. Oh, it's not too long. We can do this. I'm determined to finish it now because I don't want to leave it further. This is the reason why as you will find later, the husks of the worlds of Atzilut stand facing the Holy of Holies of Briah. For it is not possible for the branch constituted by the other side to be standing facing the branch of holiness. For not just the branch, the other side itself, but even the root of that branch could not come into existence until after the holy branches of Sefirot were already there. The holy branch had a certain deficiency, and then out of this deficiency developed the root of the other side, and from this new root there afterwards emerged a branch, the 10 Sefirot of the husk, the other side. This means that the entire array of the Sefirot was to unfold. Here we are calling all Sefirot one side, the holy side, and the whole of the other side a different side for the reason we mentioned. The power of judgment and the root of evil that we have mentioned in relation to the Sefirot is all called one extension from the primordial root according to the tzimtzum willed by Him. All that we can discern is that the power of strict judgment contained in the Sefirot is a newly instituted root of evil, because the power of the deficiency is revealed through the tzimtzum. For when what remained of the primordial perfection was joined together with what newly came into being in the tzimtzum, meaning the power of deficiency, it made the Sefirot, but this is that this very power of efficiency itself came forth through the will of Ein Sof Blessed be He. All that we can discern is that the Sefirot contain what exists in virtue of the primordial existence, which is entirely good, together with what exists on account of what came newly into being. Through the power of His will, deficiency, which is the root of evil, however, everything is one extension. What is left of the perfection together with the newly created deficiency jointly constitute the Sefirot. Afterwards, this new innovation became the root of the other side, after which the other side itself emerged in parallel with the downward extension of the Sefirot. It is of these two parallel extensions, the holy side and the other side, that the verse says God made also this one against this one, but always with the differences we discussed earlier. And the beginning of the other side is always lower than the end of the holy side, as it says. And God divided between light and darkness. Genesis 1. But as to the root of the other side, in comparison to the holy side, it's almost forbidden even to ask if there's any equivalence between them. God forbid, for the root of the good is one, unified, primordial, eternal master, blessed be He, and blessed is His name forever. Second. On the other hand, the root of the other evil side is merely something newly brought into being, was existing. It depends on the fact that this will is will what's the will. Had He not willed it, it's saying the same thing basically. He will consume death forever, wipe away the tears in the faces. Okay. The entire rate of the Sefirot was to unfold on all their levels. This includes everything good that extend downwards in preparation for the needs of lower creatures. This includes all that's necessary to benefit them as befits, according to different levels, be the angels, men, and vegetable animal. What is necessary to order, maintain them in existence, Sefirot in the form of circles known as providence, and what is necessary to benefit them according to their service, Sefirot in straight, upright form. Individual providence, which they all generate. This refers to separate creatures, but the Sefirot themselves consist of all the different measures, attributes of the supreme will. What they generate is what created afterwards. I mean, I'm reading this because I want to do the complete thing, but it seems to be pretty repetitive. Which creates the separate creation, the different offshoots, the Sefirot, the souls, the angels, the creatures in the world. All with a view to its own good. All this is called one continuation because, whether small or great, they all constitute an orderly creation, each part according to its purpose. This is not so in the case of the other side, which all in a realm of destruction and ruin, which is why it's called the other side, as was discussed below. While a created realm brought into being, the other side is not like this, if you will, which being the attributes of the supreme will, are actual godliness. This is not something of the other side, which created a realm brought forth from the supreme will, just as He brought forth other creations being out of nothingness. Okay? That would involve every kind of defect and lack of goodness. This is what is meant by the verse, God made also this one against that one. His intention was to make the good and to make everything that can possibly be the opposite of good. Every kind of damage and destruction, the many different levels of the other side correspond to all the many different kinds of damage and destruction that can exist when there is deficiency in the world. This is called the other side. This is the name of this opposite realm. You just call it as much as it is literally the opposite of the world, first extension, as we first have discussed. The creation was made with both intentions, that there should be a realm of existence and a realm of destruction, as we call them two sides. Part 3, the intention is that the powers of good gain sway and every flaw returns to a state of repair. You said that already. This is the whole purpose of the line that governs the residue, as we explained earlier. And then the true essence of God's unity will be known. The governmental order, okay, wow, I can do this, okay. The governmental order ensures that this is how everything will end, with total rectification. This is because superiority of good over evil, for good is promoted, whereas evil is the creation. He said all these things he said already. This good is from one only one master, while evil is from the other side. The angel of death, it created a slave. This is why, given that there is a war between the holy side and the other side, good and evil, well, good and necessarily victorious. But this victory will come about only because the intrinsic superiority are good over evil. Thus, through this, the truth of God's unity will be known because it's only the virtue and the fact that it's only one domain in the end, everything we rectified. For we see how the supreme will has allowed the other different kinds of damage found in the world to exist, and afterwards, at the end of everything, we know this unity will arouse and rectify everything that says, I will remove the sin of the land in one day. Zechariah 3:9. The objection could be raised that either the Holy One must be he wants to rectify everything through man's free will, or through his own power. If you say he wants to rectify everything through man's free will, does he not tell from the end? Isaiah 46:10. Surely he knows the future, and since he knows that the end they will need him, should he not have rectified everything from the very outset? The point is that Ein Sof wants to remove from the hearts of his creatures the mistake of believing that there are two domains, one which brings about good and the other evil. Accordingly, he first laid down the Sephirot, in which he does not use his unity and perfect power. On the contrary, the power of the Sephirot is like the power of a strong man who submits himself to a test in order to a rival power on the other side, which the strong man himself put in possession of a power that is contrary to his own. God has already shown all kinds of power in the world as long as they remain in the category of power alone without having ultimate control, cannot conquer the other side. On the contrary, the challenge of the other side is so great that it is impossible to escape from it without coming to God's unity. However, when his unity will be aroused and he asserts his ultimate control, he will immediately become apparent that there is no more place whatsoever on the other side. For this we will understand immediately the other side does not possess eternal power in any way, and we will see God's control and unity. Why? Because the other side contains every other power except for this. But in order to be a domain, it would have to have complete control. The other side is therefore not a domain which is subject to slave, possessing no power except for what is given to it. While the power is given is great, it does not have any control at all. For there is only one controlling master, blessed be he, and blessed be his name forever and ever. At least I finished it.